Welcome everyone to this design document guideline series. In this lecture, we are going to talk about providing guidelines related to testing. So, as an architect, when you are writing the design document, it is good practice to also give some guidelines related to test strategy. Also, I understand that, right? There would be a separate documentation for the complete test strategy. The testing leads and the testing team might work on it. But as an architect, it is an important thing that you guide the testing teams because you are more closer to the overall technology and how you plan to use it in the project. For any data projects, right, the testing should be mainly around data and not the code, right? So when you're writing any when you're working on any software engineering project, right, and you have written some program or a code, generally you would do a unit test and you would follow the integration testing and the other stuff. So same thing needs to be done here also, but then testing differs from your normal code testing. Here the main focus should be on testing the data. Okay, you should be validating the data, you should be reconciling the data. Again, based on what project you are working on, you will have to come up with the test strategy. So in the design document, do give some guidelines around it. So what all things you can add, right? You can mention how you want to do the overall testing. Okay, so let's say if it's a data migration project, so your testing strategy should be validating the data between the source and the targets, right? You will have to do a lot of data reconciliation between the existing system and then the new ecosystems target tables. Now, how much volume you should be using, how you would be doing the reconciliations, what kind of automations can be done. These are the guidelines which you can mention here. Since this is mainly related to data testing, other things related to data should also come into picture, right? Like, is the data protected properly? How is the access control being done, right? This, we are talking about the testing of all these things. So if you have some mechanism for access control, or some mechanism for data masking, you should have a test plan or test cases to test these things, okay, based on the persona. So there would be some user groups who should not be accessing something, there would be some other groups who would be able to access pi data, right? So your test cases should be around that. Now the main thing is automation, right? You cannot really manually test this data, right? When it comes to data testing, see, there would be a large volumes of data, right? We are talking about uh, big data. So here the data would be, right, once you have migrated the data for any migration projects, the data can be in terabytes, petabytes, right? You cannot have some manual test phases for this. So you'll have to automate this. So give some guidelines. Okay. So for and to give an example, if you're working on a data reconciliation kind of thing, so are there any tools available? Are there any open source libraries that can be used or anything else? Like for unit testing, like for Python, you use sometimes. I think unit test is there, PyTest is there. So similarly, are there any libraries that can be used for data kind of testing? And there are still multiple libraries available for that. Also, you can Google these, and you should be able to find some for data reconciliation as well. But how do you finally measure the success, right? Like post testing, right? You or the testing team needs to um, validate the data and say, okay, this all looks good. It is good to go into the next environment, right? Now, you will have to do one thing which I missed is, yeah, you will also have to do some performance testing and all based on the data volumes. But overall, the testing team has to say, okay, this the data is good enough and it is good to go to the next higher level or the next higher environment. So define the success criterias. And so you provide the guidelines like how should be success criterias. Let's say for a migration project, it can be, a comparison between the source and target, and each and every record should match. Okay, now it is not that simple, right? I mean, matching each and every record when you have petabytes of data, it may not be very practical. So there might be other strategy, right? You may do some count checks initially, then you might do some numerical columns and test it, right? There can be various things. So mention what should be the success criteria, and finally also mention that, right, these providers sign off based on what has been done, right? That can be a testing done on whole data, it might be on some sample data or partial data, but whatever it is, it should be mentioned so that all the stakeholders are aware of it. And finally, the one important point is how many testing cycles and parallel executions need to be done, right? As part of the success criteria, you should define that. It's not that I have compared the data for a single day or a 1 week and it is matching. That means the whole project has been working fine. It should be over a period of time. There should be multiple cycles. For a daily batch, you can do the execution on a daily level for at least a month and see if things are matching. So like that also do mention what would is the success criteria for this. So all these things would be part of your testing guidelines. Again, this section is maybe an optional one, I would say, because there is always a debate, right? Should it go into the design document or not? But I think it's a good practice. As an architect, you should provide the guidelines, and then the testing team can use this as the starting document and then come up with a complete test strategy. This is always going to help the team.